Hello, everybody. It is time for my college football picks, my predictions for the week of October the 20th. Before we get into my picks and review last week's picks between yours truly and the almighty coin, let's first of all give my mid-season awards out. We're going to go over my Heisman Trophy ballot, if I had one, as well as surprises this year in college football, as well as disappointments. We'll begin with my Heisman Trophy ballot. If I were a voter, I would be able to select 3 players. First place, second place, and third. We're going to begin at third place, Braxton Miller of Ohio State. The guy has been tremendous this year, throwing as well as running with the ball. He's already thrown for 11 touchdown passes, but don't neglect this quarterback's ability to run the ball. He's already rushed for 9 touchdowns, and this week against Purdue, I think he needs a little bit over 80 yards to already amass 1,000 yards rushing for the year. Ohio State's undefeated. It's just a shame for the Buckeyes that they're ineligible to participate in a bowl game this year because of probation, and they also are not allowed to go to the Big Ten championship. But still, Ohio State's undefeated and having one great year, thanks large part to Braxton Miller of Ohio State. Number 2 on my Heisman Trophy ballot would be Geno Smith of West Virginia. This guy has been a touchdown machine. He's been extremely accurate. Of course, we remember the, 8 touchdown game he had against Baylor just a few weeks ago. Did have that hiccup this past week against Texas Tech, but overall, if you look at his body of work, he is definitely Heisman Trophy worthy. But number 1 on my list, if you're talking about the player who's been the most impactful for his team and the reason why they're undefeated, it would be Collin Klein of Kansas State. He would be number 1 on my list. He's improved as a passer, but of course, he kills defenses with his ability to run with the ball. This quarterback from K-State has been a huge difference maker. Again, he's gotten better, and I know that he doesn't have the stats of Geno Smith. And by the way, coincidentally, Kansas State plays at West Virginia this Saturday. So we'll know a little bit more about those teams as well as where those guys stand in the Heisman Trophy race, both Klein and Smith. But Collin Klein, in terms of the impact he has for his team, what he means the most to his team, you would have to say Collin Klein right now at least deserves Heisman Trophy mention. So as of right now, during my midseason report, I would say Collin Klein is number 1 as far as Heisman Trophy candidates go. That's my opinion. Now, let's go do surprise teams this year in college football for my midseason awards. And I, no question, think that Notre Dame deserves a lot of consideration. They deserve a nomination. Maybe the toughest schedule in all of college football, and so far they've passed with flying colors. Brian Kelly's done a tremendous job at South Bend. The defense, though, has been the big talk, anchored by their All-American linebacker, Manti Te'o. The Irish have not allowed a rushing touchdown this season and not given up a defensive TD since the Purdue game, which was back in early September. Other surprise teams this year, of course, K-State. They're undefeated, ranked in the top 5. Bill Snyder, he's done it once again in Manhattan. The Florida Gators, Will Muschamp. We remember him at Texas when he was defensive coordinator, how he preached defense. Same thing is happening right now in Gainesville. Florida's got one of the best defenses in the country. Mississippi State. They're undefeated right now. They've had one surprising season. I don't know how it's going to finish there in Starkville, but so far so good for MSU. Rutgers and Cincinnati. Sometimes we laugh at the Big East Conference, but don't laugh, because right now they got more teams ranked in the BCS top 25 than the Big Ten does. Rutgers and Cincinnati are both undefeated. My surprise team of the year, though, I was either going to give it to Notre Dame or this team. I'm going to give the edge to Oregon State. The Beavers. Nobody thought that Oregon State would be ranked in the top 25 at this time of the year, much less be undefeated and ranked in the top 10. Mike Riley's done one terrific job in Corvallis, Oregon. And this past week, they handled one of the best defenses in the country in BYU, and they did it with a backup quarterback. Oregon State's been winning games in low-scoring and high-scoring fashion and coming from behind, which we saw against Arizona. So Oregon State right now is my surprise team of the year at the halfway mark of the 2012 season. Where you have surprises, though, you have disappointments, and here are some of mine at the midway mark of this season. Disappointments, Michigan State. The Spartans, I thought that they would win the Big Ten this season. Doesn't even look like they're going to win their division. They've already lost 3 games. The most recent, a home loss to an Iowa team that struggled just as much as they have. Virginia Tech, the Hokies, it's been a long year for Frank Beamer. They've lost 3 games, and they were very lucky to have gotten past Duke this past week. The only time you should struggle against Duke is if you're playing them in lacrosse or in men's basketball. Should never struggle against them in football. And Virginia Tech, it's been a struggle so far for them this year. Again, they've already lost 3 games. The Missouri Tigers, 0-4 so far in the SEC. Ouch. Yeah, Missouri, you missed the Big 12 Conference now. And speaking of the SEC, Arkansas and Auburn. Big disappointments this year. Arkansas, we've already picked on them enough. They've lost 4 already this year. The Auburn Tigers have been worse. They lost to Arkansas. Auburn's only win this year was an overtime win against Louisiana Monroe, and L.A. Monroe should have won that game if they had a good field goal kicker. They would have. Biggest disappointment to me this year so far has been the Big Ten Conference, excluding Ohio State. Ohio State, you're not involved in this conversation because you've won all your games. Not one team is ranked in the top 25 so far in the BCS, and that is very eye-opening for such a high money-making conference with traditional names like Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and they can't get one of these teams in the top 25. The Big East has more top 25 teams, as I mentioned, than the Big Ten. That's embarrassing for the Big Ten Conference. Maybe they'll turn it around the second half of the year, but the first half of the year, they have laid an absolute thug. So those are my surprises and disappointments at the midway mark of the 2012 season. Now, time for my picks. All right, this past week, both the Coin and I had losing seasons, which for me is nothing new. I haven't had a winning week so far. I was close last week, however. 4-5-1 was my record. The one was the 7-point margin of victory for Notre Dame. Notre Dame was favored by 7 at the time that we picked, so that's a push. The Coin, by the way, was worse than I was, 2-7-1 for the almighty penny. So, right now, records, I'm at 22, 43, and 1. I do make up 2 games, however, on the Coin, who's barely above 500 at 33, 32, and 1. And I'd give anything right now to be above 500 in the picks. I have really had an awful year picking against the spread. But maybe I'll do better this week. We got 13 games on the slate, beginning with a Thursday night game. The Oregon Ducks playing in Tempe against the Arizona State team that's lost just 1 game this year. That's right, just 1, and currently is the best in the Pac-12 South. This is one of those games that you get the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Oregon's going to have a tough time. I think Oregon prevails in the end. 10 points on the road on the Thursday night game is going to be a lot for Oregon to try to cover. So I think Arizona State, an improved team that they have right now under Todd Graham, I think they make this a competitive game. So give me Arizona State plus the 10. If the Coin lands on heads, it lacks the favorite. Tails is going to go with the underdog. And the Coin this week is going to take Oregon. Now Saturday games will begin in the Big 12. Maybe the game of the year so far, the Big 12 Conference in Morgantown. Kansas State is at West Virginia. The Wildcats, I'll tell you what, all they've done is win every single week. West Virginia last week got humbled big time with a blowout loss at Texas Tech. I'm taking West Virginia in this game for a few reasons. Number 1, because it's in Morgantown. Number 2 is because Kansas State's main strength is running the ball. West Virginia's been getting burned the last few weeks through the air predominantly. And I've got to think West Virginia's got a lot of pride to have got whipped last week in Lubbock. I think they bounce back this week. The spread's only 2.5. I think West Virginia will cover and will hand Kansas State their first loss of the year. Give me the Mountaineers minus the 2.5. And the almighty Coin, good flip here, is going to take Kansas State. Iowa State is at Oklahoma State. A large spread for this game. Cowboys favored by 14.5. I think Oklahoma State wins this game. I think their offense bounces back after a lethargic performance in Lawrence against Kansas last week. And from what I've been hearing, Wes Lunt might be playing as quarterback for Oklahoma State. He's been injured the past few weeks. I look for Oklahoma State to get revenge on Iowa State. Remember, Iowa State prevented OSU from going to the national championship game a year ago. Look for Oklahoma State at home in Stillwater to bounce back from not playing so well last week in Kansas, even though they won. Give me Oklahoma State minus a 14.5, and the Coin is going to take Iowa State. Texas Tech is at TCU. This is a very difficult game to read. It opened with TCU being a 1-point favorite, but now Texas Tech is a 2.5-point favorite. All the money's going toward the Red Raiders. Rarely does that happen where the point spread swings from one side to the other. I think TCU wins this game. I like what the Horned Frogs did last week with their backup QB. winning in Baylor and winning quite comfortably in the second half. Texas Tech, big win for them last week against West Virginia. But now they got to go on the road in Fort Worth to play the Horned Frogs. Give me TCU plus the 2.5 since they're the underdog. And the coin is going to go with Texas Tech. Yeah, Baylor at Texas. Not too often can you get blown out 1 week and then the next week still be a double-digit favorite. But Texas is favored by 11 points. I think Texas wins because Matt Brown teams typically bounce back after an Oklahoma loss. Just look the past few years for proof. But Texas has a lot of injuries on defense, including Jackson Jeffcoat, their great defensive end. He's out for the year, and I don't know what the status of Jordan Hicks is. He didn't play last week, the linebacker. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think Texas prevails, but 11 points right now. I don't trust the Longhorns with that big of a spread. Give me Baylor plus the 11, and the coin is going to go with Texas. Now for the SEC, South Carolina is at Florida, an enormous game at the Swamp. I'm going to take Florida. This is going to be a low-scoring ball game. Points will be at a premium in this game. Florida, to me, is playing at a very high level, and plus South Carolina, they're all-everything running back Marcus Lattimore, hip injury. He's questionable for this game. So right now, it looks on paper like Florida's a little bit healthier. Plus, they're playing at home. So give me the home team. Florida minus the 3 and to remain unbeaten, and the coin is going to go with South Carolina. The coin and I seem to differ on almost every one of these picks so far. LSU is at Texas A&M. Dangerous game for LSU, just coming off the big win against South Carolina. I think LSU's defense is going to make the difference in this game, even though it's at College Station. I know Texas A&M's got the home field advantage and has lost just one game this year. That was the game at the beginning of the year against Florida. A&M's improved. I'm not denying that. But LSU, too good of a defense, and I like what LSU did last week against South Carolina in that win. So give me the Tigers on the road, minus the 3.5. The coin is going to go with Texas A&M. We keep differing, the coin and I do. Alabama at Tennessee. The Crimson Tide and Tennessee always play every year despite the fact that they're in opposite divisions. However, I look for Alabama in the fourth quarter to pull away. I think Tennessee will fight like crazy, but it won't be enough, and Derek Dooley's job is on the line at Knoxville. Bama, number 1 team in the country, they'll show why. Give me Bama minus 20.5. Coin is going to go with Tennessee. You have Florida State at Miami. This used to be a big rivalry. It's just another game on the schedule now. I think Florida State rolls in this one. Miami, of course, I got blown out by Notre Dame not too long ago. I think Florida State trying to make amends for that loss earlier in the year with North Carolina State. E.J. Manuel and company will be too much in this one. Give me Florida State minus 20, and the coin is going to go with Miami. Nebraska at Northwestern. This will be a revenge game for Nebraska. Look for Martinez, look for Burkhead and company. Their running game will be too much, and Nebraska hasn't forgotten about that loss to the Wildcats a year ago. Northwestern's had a good year, but I look for Nebraska with a couple of weeks to have gotten ready after getting humiliated by Ohio State. Nebraska to bounce back. Give me Nebraska minus the 5. Coin is going to go with Northwestern. BYU at Notre Dame. Could be a sandwich game for the Fighting Irish after winning that overtime thriller against Stanford, and with Oklahoma coming up the following week. I look for Notre Dame to win, but I look for it to be a low-scoring game and maybe looking a little bit ahead to the Sooners. Notre Dame wins, but give me BYU plus the 13.5, and the coin is going to go with BYU. We agreed to last. Michigan State at Michigan, rivalry game. This will be a low-scoring game. I think 10 points is too many for Michigan. I know Michigan State's not playing great right now, but their defense will at least make it competitive. Give me Michigan State plus the 10, and the coin is going to go with Michigan. And finally, Penn State. Bill O'Brien's done a really good job of what has been both on the field, off the field, not the easiest at times at State College, PA. I think Penn State on the road gets the job done, and they do it with defense. And Matt McGloin, the guy I've been critical of because I don't think he's a great quarterback, but at least he's gotten better over the past few weeks. I look for Penn State to go into Iowa City and defeat the Hawkeyes. Give me Penn State plus the 3, and the coin is going to go with Penn State as well. Those are my picks. What were your picks for this week? We'll go over those picks next week at this time. But don't forget, my OU postgame show of the Sooners and Jayhawks will be very late Saturday or very early Sunday morning. So check it out. Thanks for watching.